The Starliner Aurora hummed softly as it glided through the endless black of space, its polished hull reflecting the faint glow of distant stars. Inside, the grand hall of the Interstellar Council buzzed with activity. Beings from 1,000 worlds had gathered for the annual summit, each one more imposing, more elegant, or more unusual than the next. Some floated, some shimmered with energy fields, and some walked on multiple legs, their eyes capturing every detail of the hall. Amid the swirl of prestige and ceremony, the whispers began. Princess Lyra of Xerithia stepped out of the transport shuttle. She was tall, with long limbs and an ethereal presence, her silver hair catching the soft lights of the hall. But it wasn't her elegance that drew attention, it was her flaws. A faint network of scars ran across her pale skin, remnants of a rare genetic condition unique to her species. Her wings, normally a mark of Xerithian royalty, were slightly asymmetrical, the right one smaller than the left. Her gait was graceful but not perfect. The whispers started softly, almost polite at first, then grew louder as more nobles noticed her imperfections. "Did you see her wings? They're uneven," said one diplomat from Varalin. "She cannot be a true princess with such defects," whispered another, a senator from Tainari Prime. Even the elegant council members, usually composed and detached, seemed unable to hide their judgment. Lyra ignored them as best she could, her violet eyes scanning the hall. She had learned long ago that most beings valued perfection over courage, appearance over character. And yet she held her head high, moving with the quiet dignity that had been drilled into Xerithian royalty since birth. Her attendants followed at a respectful distance, carrying ceremonial robes and the insignia of her house. When she reached the banquet hall, a wave of discomfort rippled through the assembled council members. The table was grand, made of luminescent crystal and metals harvested from asteroids. Seats were assigned, but there was one conspicuously empty next to her. No one wanted to sit beside the flawed princess. Members exchanged awkward glances, shuffling in their seats, unwilling to confront what they thought of as imperfection. Lyra hesitated, a small frown crossing her face. She felt the sting of isolation, something she had endured her entire life, even on her home planet. Here, among the most influential beings in the galaxy, it was no different. She wondered if she would ever find someone who would see beyond the surface and value her for her mind, her courage, or her determination. Then, a ripple of movement caught her attention. From the far corner of the hall, a human walked forward. Captain Joran of the Starbund was not a diplomat, nor a noble, nor even an alien of great status. He was a human, ordinary in appearance, tall, with a strong build, and a calm but confident aura. The murmurs of the crowd followed him as he approached Lyra, but he seemed oblivious. He pulled out a chair beside her without hesitation. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying a gentle warmth. Lyra blinked, surprised. "No one else wanted to sit here," she said, half amused, half wary. Her heart, which had grown accustomed to rejection, skipped a beat. "I don't mind," Joran replied simply, offering a small, reassuring smile. "I've faced far worse than a few scars and crooked wings. Besides, I prefer the company of someone genuine." The council members around them froze. Whispers turned into shocked silence. A human had broken their unspoken rules. They had never seen a human behave like this, ignoring their rigid hierarchy, ignoring their prejudices. Some gawked while others muttered complaints about protocol. Lyra felt a strange warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time in a long time, she did not feel like an object of pity or disdain. She felt seen, truly seen. The banquet began, and Lyra and Joran started talking. He asked her questions about her home planet, about her duties, and about her travels across the stars. She answered candidly, no longer hiding behind the polite formality expected of a princess. His curiosity was genuine, his respect unquestionable. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did, it was with insight rather than judgment. Hours passed, and the crowd around them remained silent, caught between fascination and disbelief. Lyra's initial wariness faded. She found herself laughing at Joran's anecdotes of near-disastrous space missions and tales of human colonies surviving impossible odds. The warmth in his presence was like a beacon, a light she had thought she would never feel in the rigid halls of alien diplomacy. Meanwhile, the whispers of Flawed continued, but their effect on Lyra diminished with every passing minute. She realized something profound. The opinions of those who only saw her appearance no longer mattered. True strength, true worth was measured by action, by heart, and by courage. Just as she was beginning to relax, an alert sounded across the hall. A holographic display lit up the center of the table, showing a distant star system. The emblem of the Zythurian Empire, long thought extinct, blinked on the screen. Panic erupted among the council members. The Zythurians had once been feared across the galaxy for their merciless conquests and advanced technology. Their sudden reappearance could mean disaster. The council debated, voices raised, arguments clashing in a chaotic symphony of fear and uncertainty. Lyra watched carefully, noting each faction's tendencies and weaknesses. Her mind, trained in Xerithian strategy, began to formulate a plan. Joran leaned slightly toward her, his voice low. "You're more than they think, aren't you?" Lyra nodded subtly. She had trained secretly in combat and diplomacy, knowing she might one day face situations like this. But because of her appearance, her abilities were often underestimated. "I have an idea," she whispered, a spark of determination lighting her eyes. "But it's dangerous." Joran's smile broadened. "Danger is my specialty, tell me." She outlined a plan. Infiltrate the Zythurian warship using a stealth shuttle, disable its power core, and prevent it from attacking the Council's system. It was risky, almost suicidal, but it relied on precision, intelligence, and unconventional thinking, skills she excelled at. The Council erupted into protests. "A princess cannot undertake such a mission," shouted one elder from Quarrel. "It is madness," another diplomat warned of political fallout if she failed. Lyra ignored them, her gaze fixed on Joran. His calm, steady presence was a reassurance she hadn't realized she needed. "Then we do it," Joran said simply. "I'm going with you." The council was aghast. A human, a non-diplomat, openly defying protocol. But Lyra didn't hesitate. She trusted him. Together, they slipped out of the hall under the cover of ceremony and confusion, making their way to the docking bay where a stealth shuttle waited. Inside the shuttle, Lyra's nerves surged. She had prepared for this mission in theory, but reality was far different. She adjusted the control panel, checked the systems, and glanced at Joran. His confidence was unwavering. "Ready?" he asked. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling her wings stretch slightly in the cramped space. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied. The shuttle detached from the aurora and accelerated into the void. Stars streaked past as they navigated the uncharted path toward the Zythurian ship. The tension between them was palpable, not from fear, but from the awareness of what was at stake. Each decision they made in the next few moments could mean life or death for countless beings. Hours passed as they approached the enemy vessel. It was enormous, a dark silhouette against the starfield, bristling with weaponry and energy fields. Lyra's pulse quickened, but she focused on the task. Using her knowledge of alien technology and her agility, she plotted a course through the ship's defenses. Joran remained at her side, piloting with steady hands and providing insight where needed. He trusted her judgment completely, offering support without overstepping. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt like she was not carrying the weight alone. She had an equal, a partner who respected her mind and skills, not just her title or appearance. As the shuttle approached the main docking bay, a patrol drone detected them. Its sensors flared and an alarm echoed across the ship. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "They've noticed us," she said, fingers dancing across the control interface. "Then let's make it interesting," Joran replied with a grin. They maneuvered through tight corridors, Lyra's wings providing unexpected advantages in narrow spaces. She slipped past the security systems with precision, her small asymmetries making her movements unpredictable to the AI. Joran followed closely, neutralizing threats with efficiency and restraint. For the first time, Lyra felt a thrill she had never known in royal courts or diplomatic halls. This was real, immediate, dangerous, and it required every ounce of skill she had cultivated. Her flaws, the things that had made others fear or dismiss her, were now her greatest assets. She moved faster, thought sharper, and acted more decisively than anyone aboard the ship expected. As they reached the core, Lyra set the device to disable the ship's power output. Joran watched the sensors, ready to assist if anything went wrong. A final warning sounded, but Lyra's hands were steady. With a small flick, the core powered down and the massive ship floated inert, harmless in orbit. They had done it. The shuttle disengaged and turned toward the aurora, both of them exhilarated and exhausted. Lyra's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the rush of achievement. She had faced judgment, prejudice, and danger, and emerged victorious. Joran glanced at her, a proud smile on his face. See, flaws can be strengths. Lyra's lips curved into a genuine smile, a rare moment of pure happiness. For the first time, she did not feel like an outsider, not with him, not now. As the shuttle docked back at the Aurora, she realized that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, prejudice, and danger. But she no longer feared it. With courage, intelligence, and someone who truly believed in her, she could face anything. And maybe, just maybe, the rest of the galaxy would learn to see her as she truly was, not flawed, but extraordinary. The hall of the Interstellar Council was in chaos. Alarms blared, warning lights flashed, and diplomats from dozens of planets shouted over one another, their voices blending into a cacophony of panic. The holographic image of the Zythurian warship hovered above the council table, an immense dark shape bristling with energy weapons. Even the most confident delegates looked fearful. Whispers of the Zythurian Empire's ruthless conquests spread like wildfire through the hall. Princess Lyra stood at the edge of the chaos, her violet eyes calm but sharp. She had anticipated this possibility. From the moment the alert sounded, her mind had begun mapping options, calculating risks, and predicting reactions. Her wings twitched slightly in the tight council hall, a subtle sign of tension, but she remained composed. Beside her, Captain Joran, the human who had sat beside her earlier despite the council's judgments, placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You're thinking ahead," he said, his voice calm amid the storm. "I like that," Lyra nodded. "If the council acts on fear alone, we lose control. We must act strategically, not reactively." Several elders turned to glare at her, their pride wounded by her confidence. "A princess cannot undertake such decisions," bellowed one, his voice trembling with authority and fear. "You are not trained for war." Lyra met his gaze without hesitation. "I may not fit your ideal of perfection," she said softly, "but I am trained for this. I have studied strategy, diplomacy, and combat. I will act to protect this council and the galaxy." Some delegates snickered, others shook their heads, but none could deny the determination in her eyes. Joran stepped forward. "I'm going with her. No one else is ready or willing to face this threat directly. Let's get the job done." The hall erupted into protests. Security officers attempted to stop them, but Lyra waved them aside. Her authority, backed by Joran's unwavering presence, silenced most of the council. She moved with purpose toward the docking bay, ignoring whispers and stares, her wings brushing lightly against her back. The stealth shuttle waited for them, sleek and silent, its black hull reflecting the light of the docking bay. Lyra's hands hovered over the controls, checking every system meticulously. Joran watched her with respect and admiration. He had flown countless missions, faced countless dangers, but never had he encountered someone so precise, so intelligent, and so fearless, especially someone so judged by their appearance. "Ready?" he asked. Lyra exhaled slowly. "Ready," she replied, though a small part of her acknowledged the danger. This mission was not a simple exercise. The Zythurians were unpredictable, advanced, and deadly. One misstep could destroy not only them, but the Council fleet orbiting the planet below. The shuttle detached from the Aurora, gliding silently into the void. Stars streaked past as they accelerated toward the Zythurian ship, which loomed larger with every passing moment. Lyra's heart raced, but she focused on calculations, anticipating the enemy's movements and planning her approach. As they approached the enemy vessel, Lyra scanned the sensors. "Energy shields are strong, but there's a blind spot along the port side," she said. "We'll enter there." Joran adjusted the shuttle's course with skillful hands. "I trust you. Lead the way." The port side approached slowly, shadows of the enemy ship stretching across the void. The stealth systems activated, rendering the shuttle nearly invisible to Zythurian sensors. Lyra's wings twitched slightly, a subtle sign of her focus and tension. The slight asymmetry, which had caused so much judgment among her peers, now allowed her to fit through the narrow gaps of the ship's external defense grids. They slipped inside the vessel, shadows among shadows. The corridors were dark, lit only by faint emergency lights. Lyra moved first, her agility allowing her to slip past security drones with ease. Her mind raced, analyzing every turn, every camera, every patrol. Joran followed closely, neutralizing automated threats with quiet precision, never overshadowing her leadership. At one point, a drone noticed movement. Its sensors flared and a silent alarm began to hum. Lyra froze for a heartbeat, then whispered, "Split." She leapt through a narrow maintenance shaft, wings folded tightly. Joran followed a moment later, using a clever maneuver to disable the drone's circuits. "Your wings," Joran muttered, slightly amazed. "They're giving you an edge I never expected." Lyra smiled faintly. "What some call a flaw, others may call a gift." The deeper they went into the Zythurian ship, the more dangerous it became. The walls hummed with energy, pulsing like a heartbeat, and mechanical sentries moved silently, almost imperceptibly. Lyra's mind worked rapidly, calculating timing, angles, and sequences. Every flaw the Zythurians assumed in her appearance became a tool, a way to outmaneuver them. Finally, they reached the power core, a massive cylinder of pulsating energy, far beyond the scale of anything Lyra had ever seen outside her planet's orbital reactors. Joran's sensors detected automated defenses locking onto them. "Now or never," Lyra whispered, eyes fixed on the core. With meticulous precision, she activated the disabling device, a compact Xerithian invention capable of neutralizing energy flows without catastrophic explosions. The device hummed as it synchronized with the core's systems. A sudden pulse of energy shot through the room, but Lyra's careful calculations held. The core flickered, alarms blared, and then silence. The massive Zythurian warship went inert, floating harmlessly in orbit. Joran exhaled, a smile breaking across his face. "You did it." Lyra's own breath came in shallow gasps. She had done more than just disable a weapon. She had proven herself not to the Council, but to herself. Her wings flexed, catching a stray beam of light, revealing the subtle asymmetry that had caused so much judgment. But she no longer cared. Those imperfections had allowed her to succeed. They retraced their path through the ship, avoiding patrols and returning to the shuttle. Joran looked at her with admiration. "See, flaws are strengths if you know how to use them." Lyra nodded, her confidence growing. "Yes, and intelligence, courage, and creativity matter more than appearances." As they approached the Aurora, the shuttle detected Council fleet sensors locking onto their position. They executed evasive maneuvers, slipping through narrow asteroid belts and debris fields to avoid detection. Lyra's hands moved with precision, her mind anticipating every movement of the enemy and the Council fleet alike. When they finally docked, the Council erupted into shocked murmurs. Delegates whispered among themselves, many unable to reconcile the flawed princess with the hero who had saved them from disaster. Cameras recorded her every movement, capturing the courage and skill she had displayed. Joran escorted her out of the shuttle. "You've changed everything tonight," he said softly, "not just for them, but for yourself." Lyra looked around, eyes scanning the hall. Faces that had once expressed disdain now showed awe and admiration. Yet she felt no triumph in their judgment. What mattered was not their recognition, but her own understanding of her worth. Later, as the Council convened to discuss the Zythurian threat, Lyra and Joran were summoned to address the assembly. Every eye was on them as they entered. Lyra's presence commanded respect, not through fear or title, but through her actions. "Princess Lyra," began the senior counselor, his voice strained with humility, "your actions have saved countless lives. The Council owes you gratitude beyond measure." Lyra inclined her head, maintaining her composure. "Thank you," she said simply. "I only acted because the threat required immediate action. The true lesson here is that ability and courage cannot be measured by appearances alone." Joran stood beside her, silent support evident in his posture. The counselors nodded, slowly absorbing the truth of her words. Some were reluctant, bound by centuries of prejudice. Others were inspired, realizing that the galaxy's survival sometimes depended on those who were underestimated. In the following hours, Lyra received messages from multiple worlds. Diplomatic envoys, once hesitant to approach her, now sought her insight. Young leaders wrote letters of admiration, expressing hope that they too could rise above judgments based on appearance. Even adults, hardened by politics and fear, admitted quietly that they had underestimated her. That night, as the stars glimmered beyond the council hall's expansive windows, Lyra stood alone for a moment, her wings folded gently against her back. Joran approached and leaned casually against the railing beside her. "You know," he said, "I've seen a lot in my life. I've faced pirates, war zones, and impossible odds. But I've never met someone who could turn judgment into power like you did." Lyra smiled faintly, a rare moment of vulnerability. I've had to survive being underestimated my whole life. I've learned that perception can be manipulated, that flaws can be strengths, and that courage is not always obvious. Joran nodded. And now the galaxy will see it too. Lyra's eyes sparkled as she gazed at the distant stars. She knew this was only the beginning. The Zythurian Empire might rise again. The Council might continue to judge superficially. But she had learned something more important than any title or honor. Her worth was not dictated by what others saw, but by what she could do, who she could protect, and the choices she made in the face of danger. And for the first time in her life, Lyra did not feel like a flawed princess. She felt unstoppable. The aftermath of the Zythurian mission reverberated throughout the galaxy. Word spread faster than any courier or hyperwave transmission could carry. The flawed Princess Lyra of Zerithia, along with the human Captain Joran, had infiltrated a Zythurian warship and disabled its core, preventing what could have been a devastating attack on countless systems. Back at the Interstellar Council, the mood was tense but electric. Delegates who had once ignored or mocked Lyra now found themselves scrutinizing her every move. Cameras and sensors recorded her entrance into the council hall. Some counselors whispered apologies, others offered hesitant smiles, still unsure how to reconcile the young princess they had underestimated with the hero the galaxy now celebrated. Lyra walked in confidently, her posture straight, her wings folded neatly against her back. Joran followed closely, his calm presence reinforcing her authority. The council had convened a special session to hear her report and to formally recognize her actions, though many counselors did so reluctantly, still bound by centuries of protocol and prejudice. The senior counselor, a tall, silver-skinned being from Volaris, cleared his throat. Princess Lyra, Captain Joran, the council has been informed of your actions. While some members were skeptical, it is clear that you have acted with courage, intelligence, and skill. Your success has averted catastrophe. Lyra inclined her head politely. Thank you. I acted because the situation demanded it. My goal was never recognition, but to prevent harm to countless lives. The true lesson is that ability cannot always be measured by appearances. Some council members shifted uncomfortably. They had always judged Lyra by the symmetry of her wings, the faint scars on her skin, the subtle differences they considered defects. Now they had to acknowledge that she was not only capable but exceptional. A junior diplomat from Tainari Prime, a planet known for its rigid hierarchy, raised a timid hand. Princess Lyra, may I ask, how did you manage to navigate the enemy ship? Its defenses are considered impenetrable. Lyra's eyes sparkled, and a faint smile touched her lips. I studied their systems and learned their patterns. I relied on strategy, observation, and careful timing. Some flaws, such as what others call imperfections, can be turned into advantages if one understands how to use them. A murmur spread across the hall. Diplomats exchanged glances, suddenly realizing how short-sighted their earlier judgments had been. Joran stepped forward, speaking with quiet confidence. She didn't do it alone. But even with assistance, it takes extraordinary courage and intelligence to succeed under those conditions. The galaxy should take note, not of her appearance, but of her actions. Lyra's gaze softened slightly at Joran's words. She had always felt isolated, judged for her differences, but his respect and acknowledgement reminded her that value was measured by deeds, not appearances. As the session continued, representatives from distant systems began submitting requests to meet Lyra personally. Children from dozens of planets sent messages of admiration, expressing hope that they could emulate her courage. Her flaws, once considered liabilities, became symbols of resilience, proof that even those who were different could achieve greatness. Lyra spent hours responding, offering advice and encouragement. She spoke to leaders about strategy, diplomacy, and the importance of embracing one's unique traits. She shared her perspective on leadership, emphasizing that true authority comes not from perfection but from the ability to act wisely and with courage. Joran watched quietly, proud of her composure and her intelligence. "You're inspiring them," he said softly. "Not just for what you did, but for who you are." Lyra shook her head slightly, smiling. "I never wanted to inspire, I only wanted to survive and serve." "But now you do both," Joran replied. Later, the council reconvened to discuss the implications of the Zythurian return. Delegates debated defensive strategies, the need for alliances, and the possibility of negotiating with the remnants of the Empire. Throughout the discussions, Lyra's input was invaluable. She suggested unconventional tactics, using her understanding of alien systems to anticipate potential moves. Counselors who had previously dismissed her now hung on her every word, realizing that her judgment and insight were unmatched. During a brief pause in the session, Lyra found herself standing beside Joran in a quiet corner of the hall. The soft hum of the council's energy fields created a calm atmosphere, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. "They're finally seeing what I've always known," she said quietly. "But I wonder, will they truly understand, or are they only impressed because I succeeded under impossible odds?" Joran tilted his head, considering her words. "Some will understand, some won't. But what matters is that you know your worth, and what you did tonight proves it beyond doubt." Lyra nodded slowly, taking in the enormity of their achievement. She had faced prejudice, danger, and skepticism, yet she had prevailed. Her flaws, once a source of shame, had become tools that allowed her to succeed where others might have failed. That night, she walked along the observation deck of the Aurora, gazing at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before her, full of unknown dangers, political intrigue, and opportunity. She thought of the young beings who would now look up to her, the leaders who would consider her advice, and the countless lives that had been saved because she refused to be defined by her appearance. Joran joined her, leaning against the railing. "The galaxy is bigger than anyone realizes," he said, "and you've already started changing it one action at a time." Lyra smiled faintly. "I never imagined that simply surviving would have such an impact." "Survival isn't just about staying alive," Joran replied. "It's about making choices that others might be too afraid to make. That's what sets you apart." As they stood together, the stars reflecting in their eyes, Lyra realized that her journey was only beginning. The Zythurians might regroup, political challenges would arise, and her critics would continue to judge superficially. But she now knew that with courage, intelligence, and allies like Joran, she could face anything. The next morning, the council convened a ceremony to honor her and Joran formally. The hall was filled with delegates from dozens of systems, their expressions a mixture of admiration and lingering doubt. Cameras broadcast the event to countless planets, and messages of congratulations poured in from distant worlds. Lyra ascended the dais with calm grace. The crowd fell silent, awaiting her words. She did not speak of her flaws or her doubts. Instead, she addressed the courage of those who act in the face of fear, the importance of using one's abilities wisely, and the value of embracing differences rather than hiding them. Her words resonated far beyond the council hall. In every corner of the galaxy, beings who had been judged or overlooked found inspiration. Children with scars, leaders who had been underestimated, and diplomats who had once doubted themselves now saw that greatness was not about perfection. It was about courage, intelligence, and heart. Joran stood beside her throughout the ceremony, a steady presence that reinforced her confidence. He had seen her at her most vulnerable and at her most decisive, and he respected her all the more for it. Together, they represented a new model of leadership, one that valued action over appearance, ability over convention, and character over status. After the ceremony, Lyra returned to her quarters to rest, her mind still buzzing with the events of the past days. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the whispered judgments, the isolation, the moments of self-doubt, and she realized that every challenge she had faced had prepared her for this moment. Her flaws, her scars, and her perceived weaknesses had become her strengths. As she rested, messages continued to arrive from across the galaxy, letters, holovids, and personal envoys seeking her counsel. She read each one carefully, offering thoughtful advice and encouragement. Every message reinforced the same truth, that courage, intelligence, and integrity mattered far more than outward appearances. In the quiet of the night, she thought of her home planet, Zerithia. Her parents, her tutors, and her peers had always emphasized perfection, but the galaxy had taught her something more profound. True strength comes not from meeting others' expectations, but from embracing one's unique traits and using them to make a difference. Joran entered her quarters quietly, carrying a small tray with food. He set it down gently. "You've done enough for one day," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Rest now. Tomorrow will bring new challenges." Lyra smiled faintly, a warmth spreading through her chest. I never imagined that someone would believe in me when no one else would, she admitted. Joran shrugged, a faint grin on his face. I didn't need to imagine, I just saw who you were. That's all it ever took. As she prepared for rest, Lyra knew that the galaxy's eyes were upon her. Some would doubt her, some would admire her, but she no longer feared judgment. She had proven her worth not through words, not through appearances, but through action. And in doing so, she had set the stage for a future where others might also rise above prejudice and doubt. The stars outside her window shimmered like tiny beacons of possibility. Lyra felt a sense of peace and determination. The journey was far from over, but she was ready. She had faced danger, defied expectation, and emerged victorious. And with allies like Joran, she knew that nothing, not prejudice, not fear, not the vastness of space itself, could hold her back. As the first light of the distant sun touched the council hall, Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the day lift from her shoulders. She had faced the impossible, and in doing so, she had changed not only her destiny but the destiny of countless others. And in that moment, she understood something vital, that true greatness comes not from perfection, but from courage, heart, and the willingness to act when others will not. And so, the galaxy watched, listened, and learned. A princess who had once been shunned for her flaws had risen, proving that even in a universe filled with judgment and expectation, the most unlikely heroes could shine the brightest. Months had passed since Princess Lyra and Captain Joran had thwarted the Zythurian warship. The galaxy was slowly recovering from the shock of the sudden reappearance of the once feared empire. Rumors of their return had caused unrest among worlds, but Lyra's decisive action had not only prevented catastrophe, it had inspired hope across the stars. Lyra now traveled with Joran aboard the Starbound, moving between worlds that had requested her guidance or intervention. Unlike the formal corridors of the Interstellar Council, these worlds were chaotic, vibrant, and often dangerous. Yet Lyra moved through them with confidence. Every planet they visited, every council they advised, reminded her that leadership was about more than titles or appearances. It was about action, insight, and courage. Their first stop was Cathara, a planet recovering from a civil war. The ruling council had been fractured for decades, unable to unite their people. Lyra's arrival sparked curiosity. She moved among the delegates and citizens alike, offering advice and insight, listening more than speaking. She demonstrated patience, intelligence, and empathy, qualities often overlooked in leaders. Her wings, still slightly asymmetrical, moved gracefully as she gestured to emphasize her points. Children who had once been shunned for their differences now watched her with admiration. Joran observed quietly, impressed. Everywhere we go, people look to you, not because of your title, but because you act when it matters. Lyra smiled faintly. It seems that action is always louder than words, and courage always leaves a mark. Their next mission led them to Vyrlia, a mining colony on the edge of known space. The colony faced a threat from a rogue band of pirates who had grown bold in the absence of central authority. Lyra devised a plan that combined diplomacy and strategy. She spoke with the pirate leaders first, offering negotiation and compromise while secretly preparing defenses with the colony's security forces. Her ability to anticipate enemy behavior, combined with her tactical mind, allowed her to prevent bloodshed and secure the colony's safety. News of her successes traveled fast. Messages from across the galaxy arrived daily, not just from leaders, but from ordinary beings. Children wrote letters asking how to be brave, how to stand up for themselves, and how to turn weaknesses into strengths. Adults who had faced prejudice, failure, or isolation sent messages of admiration, inspired to reconsider how they judged others. Through it all, Joran remained a steady presence. He never overshadowed her achievements, instead offering support, encouragement, and when necessary, a calm voice of reason. Their partnership was extraordinary. He had been the first to see beyond her appearance, and together, they demonstrated that courage and intelligence were universal languages that transcended species, status, and expectation. One evening, while resting aboard the Starbound, Lyra and Joran observed a distant nebula shimmering across the viewport. Lyra's wings flexed slightly as she leaned forward, lost in thought. "The galaxy is changing," she said softly, "but will it remember what truly matters? Or will old prejudices return once the immediate danger passes?" Joran shrugged. "Change doesn't happen overnight, but you've already set a precedent. You've shown that being different is not a weakness and that courage and action define worth. That example will linger, even if some try to forget it. Lyra nodded, her violet eyes reflecting the nebula's colors. She thought of the young beings who now dared to dream beyond the limits others had imposed. She thought of the counselors who had doubted her and how they now sought her guidance. And she thought of herself, a princess once shunned for her flaws, now celebrated for her courage, intelligence, and heart. Their travels eventually led them back to the Interstellar Council. By now, Lyra was not only recognized for her heroism, but respected for her wisdom and diplomacy. Council sessions that once seemed daunting were now opportunities to implement strategic decisions and foster alliances. She no longer needed to prove herself to those who judged superficially. They had learned her value firsthand. During one session, a young delegate approached her cautiously. "Princess Lyra," he said, voice trembling slightly, I wanted to thank you. Your actions have inspired me. I've always been judged for being different, but seeing you, it shows that differences can be strengths." Lyra smiled warmly. "Never let anyone tell you that you are less because of how you look or what you are. Courage, kindness, and intelligence are far more important than appearance. Embrace your unique qualities and use them wisely." The delegate's eyes shone with newfound confidence. Lyra realized that these small interactions, the seeds of hope and courage planted across the galaxy, were as meaningful as any political victory or battle won. One evening, after a long day of council work and interstellar diplomacy, Lyra and Joran stood together on the observation deck of the council hall. The twin suns of the home system were setting, casting golden light across the room. Lyra's wings shimmered in the sunlight, their asymmetry now a symbol of individuality and resilience rather than imperfection. "You've changed everything," Joran said quietly. "Not just for the council, not just for the galaxy, but for yourself. You've proven that being different doesn't mean being weak." Lyra looked at him, a faint smile touching her lips. "I've learned that courage isn't about perfection. It's about taking action when it matters, even if others doubt you. And having allies who believe in you makes all the difference." Joran nodded. "Then we keep moving forward. There are still worlds that need guidance, still threats that need neutralizing, and still young beings who need inspiration. You've become more than a princess. You're a symbol." Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past months, the judgments she had endured, and the victories she had achieved. She had faced prejudice, danger, and doubt, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Over the following weeks, Lyra and Joran continued their missions across the galaxy. They negotiated peace between warring factions, prevented potential disasters, and helped communities rebuild after crises. Everywhere they went, Lyra's presence inspired hope, courage, and resilience. Children who had been shunned or bullied began to see themselves in her. Leaders who had underestimated her were forced to reconsider their assumptions. And ordinary beings, living on distant planets or traveling through uncharted space, now had a reason to believe that courage, intelligence, and heart could overcome fear, prejudice, and adversity. Throughout it all, Lyra never forgot her own journey. She remembered the whispers, the judgmental stares, and the isolation she had endured as a young princess. But she also remembered Joran's unwavering support, the thrill of facing danger, and the satisfaction of proving that action and character mattered far more than appearances. One evening, while observing a distant star cluster from the starbound, Lyra reflected on the galaxy's transformation. "Perhaps this is only the beginning," she said softly to Joran. He nodded. "It is, but you've started something that will last. You've shown that even the most unlikely heroes can make a difference. You've turned flaws into strengths, doubts into courage, and fear into inspiration." Lyra's wings flexed gently as she gazed at the stars. "I hope others will continue to learn that lesson even after I am gone," Joran smiled. "They will, because you've shown them the way." As the twin suns dipped below the horizon of the distant system, casting their golden light across the deck, Lyra felt a profound sense of peace. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and often dangerous, but it was also full of potential, hope, and possibility. And she was ready to face whatever came next, not as a flawed princess, but as a leader, a protector, and a symbol of courage and resilience. Her journey had begun with whispers of judgment, with being ignored and overlooked. But it had grown into something far greater, a legacy of action, courage, and hope. And with Joran by her side, she knew that the galaxy would continue to witness the extraordinary power of someone who refused to be defined by appearances, who acted when others hesitated, and who inspired others to do the same. Lyra turned to Joran, a small smile on her face. "Together, we've done something incredible, not just for ourselves, but for the entire galaxy," Joran grinned. "And we're just getting started." The stars shimmered around them, endless and full of possibility. The galaxy had seen a princess rise above judgment and fear. It had seen courage and intelligence triumph over prejudice. And it had seen the beginning of a future where action, heart, and character mattered far more than appearances. Lyra stretched her wings slightly, feeling their strength and flexibility. The asymmetry that had once caused whispers of judgment now seemed like a symbol of everything she had overcome. Every scar, every perceived flaw, every moment of doubt had led to this point. A galaxy-wide recognition that greatness comes from within, from courage, from intelligence, and from the will to act when others cannot. And so, with the stars shining brightly and the galaxy watching, Princess Lyra and Captain Joran continued their journey. Together they inspired hope, challenged prejudice, and proved that even in a universe filled with judgment, the most unlikely heroes could shine the brightest. For the first time in her life, Lyra did not feel flawed. She felt unstoppable.